Hey, you guys, welcome to this week's episode of the Pantry Chat, Food for Thought. This week, we're talking about something that a lot of you has shown a lot of interest in, and that is dealing with toxins, common toxins. And we're kind of going to be going over the who, what, when, where, why, and how to deal with them. And this week, we have a really exciting guest, which is Dr. Tori Thompson. Dr. Tori is the doctor who is helping Josh and I as we work through some of our toxin issues. You guys have probably been following that story. If you haven't, you can go back. We'll have some links for you in the show notes to get to the other podcasts or the other videos that we have done on this topic. So we're going to be diving in and talking with her. So I wanted to give you a quick bio on Dr. Tori, because I think it's really fascinating. I think her story mirrors so many of our stories. She struggled with her health for many years, like so many of us. She went from doctor to doctor searching for answers and was told everything is fine, or I'm not sure how to help you. I think we've all heard those answers before. She went to over 25 doctors and spent over $100,000 on lab testing, supplements, and various procedures to make very little progress with her health. She was gaining weight and physically and mentally exhausted, couldn't remember words, was depressed, in extreme pain, and honestly just wanted to give up. It wasn't until she was going to school to get her doctorate that she was finally able to put the pieces of the puzzle together and find out that she had Lyme's disease, mold toxin, and parasites. Through a natural approach with food, supplements, and lifestyle adjustments, she was able to finally find healing. She's now on a mission to educate and empower others to take their health back into their own hands. Dr. Tori addresses symptoms including adrenal burnout, brain fog, infertility, autoimmune diseases, hormonal imbalance, depression, anxiety, weight gain, fatigue, and so much more. I know you guys are super excited to meet her because she is just absolutely amazing person. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of the background of my story with her as she and I get to chit-chatting. But first, I want to call out the sponsor for this week's podcast episode. This week's sponsor is Azure Standard. If you guys have been listening to the Pantry Chat for a while, you'll know that I love getting to do sponsor spots for companies that I have personally used for a long time. And Azure Standard is probably at the top of that list. Azure Standard is the place that I buy all of my bulk health food supplies, my bulk grains for the house, bulk groceries of all sorts of different types. They have amazing healthy options, a lot of organic options, and they're just a really great way to be able to bring in really good quality food in bulk for a good cost and get it delivered right into your area without the shipping costs if you join the co-op program. So you're going to want to check them out. Again, Josh and I have used them in our own home for almost 20 years now. And every single month I get my Azure order. That's how I stay stocked up. I'd really encourage you guys to check them out. Okay, without further ado, let's bring on Dr. Tori. Hey, Dr. Tori, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Now, I first met you through doing a toxin talk that Mike Dillard put on. I love Mike Dillard. I followed him for lots of years. And so he did this toxin talk. And one of the things that really stood out to me was you said something about stubborn weight gain, that weight that just would not fall off. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's me. And we're told here, I'm a woman in my 40s. I've got, many babies, many children, 11 children that 10 of them that I've birthed myself. And so everybody kind of does that. Well, you look really good for having 10 children, and I'm like, yes, but I know something's not right in my body and I can feel it. So when I heard you say that, I started thinking through my story and realized the one time that I was able to lose weight, the one time I forced myself to lose weight because I just went in such a calorie deficit that, is essentially starving my body. I got so sick and the lights just went off. And I said, well, of course, I've released all the toxins that are stored in my fat. And so I immediately was like, I need to get this testing done to see what I've got in my body. And that's where we found that there are, I have a couple things going on with me. The main thing is really this super high levels of glyphosate that I'm dealing with. But I also had a protozoa. We had some molds, food-based molds that both Josh and I had. So after I did it, then we had Josh do the testing. And so he came up with a whole different set of toxins that he's struggling with. And so now we're working our way through the detox program under your supervision. And I just got to say, I love your approach to everything that you do. You've made it so easy and so gentle on my system. So anyways, that's my backdrop of meeting you and getting to work with you. I'm just so excited to get to share you and what you do with everybody else, because I think so many people are struggling with this.
Yeah, it's unfortunately becoming far more common to see these massive toxin loads, and people have no idea where to start, no idea where it's coming from. And so it's a big gray area for a lot of people that they struggle just to get answers. And then once they have them, what do I do about it?
And that's an important part of it, because I've had a lot of people ask me, well, what labs did you get done? I'm like, well, I can tell you the labs that I got done, but if you don't have somebody to look at this and give you a plan, then, your doctor's just going to be like, if they'll even order the labs in the first place. Cause I've had a couple of people say, my doctor just straight out said, we're not going to do that. Then looking at it, it all looks a little bit like Greek when you get that. So you really need a little bit of help or a lot of time to do a lot of research to work through it on your own. Okay. Tell us about the name of your practice, though, and what it means, because I just learned this and I totally love it. I think it's really cool.
So my practice is called Meraki Wellness, and it means to put your soul into your work is what it means in Greek. And so I saw this, I stumbled upon it, and I was like, oh my gosh, it hit home for me, because that is what I do. For me, it's such a personal passion project to help people and hope that they never have to go through the struggle of what I went through and what so many others go through. So when I saw this name, I was like, done, found it. That's it. We found the name.
That's great. I totally love that. And that it means so much, when you can put your soul into something that you're doing, when you can really put your heart into it and believe it, it's like, it's so much more than a job, right? Yeah. That's what I feel about what I get to do, both as a mom and a homesteader. And then here, as a podcaster and everything else that we do, it's like, I feel so blessed to be able to do what I'm doing. And it really propels you forward day after day. So I told everybody your bio. We heard a little bit about your story. Do you feel at this point like you've been able to get yourself to a place to healthy after all? I mean, that's a lot of a load to have Lyme's disease, mold toxins, which can just really be debilitating, and parasites. That's a lot going on in a body. So no wonder you didn't feel well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you look at it now and you're like, wow, I was actually doing pretty good. It wasn't, could have been worse. But, now I'd say I'm 95% there. And I know the things that bring me down. High stress. I don't do really well with high stress. And then I had another mold exposure a few years ago, and that kind of flared up some autoimmune conditions that I'd had laying dormant. But now I'm able to spot it so fast that I would say 90% of the time, 95% of the time, I feel incredible, better than I ever thought. And then when stuff does pop up, because Lyme is something that it never goes away, right? It goes into remission, and then stressors or other toxins can bring it to, back to active. So now I know, oh, that doesn't feel right. I'm going to dive in and whatever I need to do. And I can usually kick it super fast.
Yeah, that's great. That's so good. You get to actually manage your own health, which is such an important thing today, because you're just not going to get that really from, from traditional doctor models. You just really don't get that experience of that health education that you need in order to be able to personalize the health to yourself and to take care of yourself really well. So that's really cool. Okay, I want to jump right in because we have a lot we want to cover today, and this is a really big topic. So first of all, you get to see people, you're seeing their lab results all the time. You're doing this kind of testing with people all the time. What are some of the most common toxins that you're seeing come up in people's labs today, like the recent stuff that you're seeing?
I would say over the last 5 years, I'm seeing more and more toxins. I used to get maybe 1 or 2 on people's labs. And over the last 5, maybe 10 years, you're seeing now where people have 5, 10, 15 toxins. But as a whole, I would say the big guys are going to be, whether it's pesticides, herbicides, so glyphosate, your pesticides on food, and then other herbicides that even we use around the house, whether it's bug spray or mosquito treatment. Those guys are probably the top that I see, and there's about 15 or 20 of them. And so usually people have at least one, if not 5, 6, 7 of them. And they're all linked to, various things, but those are some of the most toxic ones as well as the most common. Then you've got the plastics, and BPA being one of the leaders of that group. I would say it's almost impossible to see someone that doesn't have BPA in their system or these plastics in their system. And so the plastics probably coming in at second. And then I would say heavy metals are coming in at third. And whether it's heavy metals from their water, from their fish, some sort of heavy metal exposures right in there. And then you've got some outliers of other hormone disruptors and stuff, but it's really those pesticides, herbicides, and plastics are the big ones right now.
Now, you made a comment to me in one of our meetings that you're also starting to see more radioactive stuff coming in after some of the more recent, exposures that we've had in the oceans.
Yes, cesium is something we used to not see very often, right? So in a heavy metals test, there's a few radioactive elements on it. Uranium, cesium, and they weren't that common. You didn't see them too often unless someone grew up next to a uranium mine or something like that. Nowadays, I see cesium more often than not. I'm seeing it in young kids, which you have never used to see. And the common trend is they either eat a lot of seafood. Cesium-137 was released when Fukushima happened, so that got into the ocean. And then there's lots of cesium spillages that have happened. So I'm seeing it younger and younger, and I see it more common than not. And these radioactive elements are tough to get out. They're very hard on the system. And then if it's something like, they have a few of them, then you're looking at a very long detox because it's not something the body can just dump. It's so toxic. It's a very slow process.
Interesting. So these things really do affect us one way or another. You kind of get the news reports and they're like, oh, it's not going to get over here. It's not going to do this. It's not that. And it kind of minimizes it. I think they don't want people to feel panicky, right? But it does eventually end up into the entire system, which is, good to be aware of. A little disheartening maybe with the way the world is going right now, and yet really important to be aware of. So you've touched on it a little bit, but where are these common toxins coming from? Like, let's really dive in so we make sure we know where are we getting them from? What sources should we be looking at?
So this is one of those things of the last 50 years, we are a giant science experiment. And so you are getting toxins pretty much from everywhere. And so we look at, agriculture. Agriculture started using pesticides and herbicides very heavily. So that's a huge source for people. And you look at something like glyphosate. Glyphosate's so heavily used that they did a study, it's been many years now, and they found glyphosate in air samples, in rain samples, in water samples. So you might be eating organic, but you're still getting it from, air, water, and that. So you've got food is probably the most food and water are probably our biggest sources of toxins because, whether you're eating organic food or then you're getting into the non-organic food and processed food, you're getting toxins from all angles. Then you look at plastics as well. We've really upped our use of plastics over the last 50, 70 years. And so you now have, a lot of things come in plastic. We've got plastic water bottles, plastic food storage, plastic to-go containers of your food. That is a huge source for people, is just general plastic usage. And then it's also what type of water are you drinking? And a lot of the water filters that have come on the market and claim that they're really good water filters, Brita, for example, have turned out not to be really able to filter these things out of the water. So that's probably the most common sources. Then you look at all of your cleaning products, all of your makeup, personal care products. Unless you're using, you're making your own or you're using organic versions of them, they all have some sort of toxins in them. And so for a lot of people, it's extremely overwhelming when you're like, oh my gosh, my food storage, my water bottles, like everything has toxins in it. And I always tell people, go like bite-sized chunk it, right? Let's first go to organic. Then let's switch over to glass and, bite-sized chunk it. You don't need to get very overwhelmed, because when you do realize that toxins are coming from every angle, it can, you can get paralysis on it. But it is truly a thing of, unless you're going out of your way to buy the clean version, you're making your own, there's generally some sort of toxin in it.
Yeah. And I think the overwhelm is a really important thing to talk about, because it is true. You start looking around and you're like, my world is toxic, and it can actually create anxiety for people. I've talked to a couple people who are like, I had to just not even deal with it because I got so anxious over the whole thing. And, I understand needing to reduce the anxiety, but we also want to reduce the toxins where we can. I just had the opportunity to speak with Stephen Ezel from Truly Free the other day, and they do all non-toxic cleaning products. And, he was really recommending that people think first about what they put in their body, what they consume, and then second, what they put on their body, and then what they surround themselves with, is like, just work through those steps in that order. Is that something that you would agree with?
Absolutely. Because what's going into your body there's no avoiding it. So if you put a pesticide into your system, it's going in there. Then, what goes on it, everything, most things can be absorbed through the skin. There are certain toxins that actually can't penetrate skin. Certain heavy metals are that way. And then, of course, your home and your surroundings. And so, yeah, I would agree with that. It's spot on, and it allows you to do it again in those bite-sized chunks.
Yeah. And even with that, the first chunk, like what you put in your body, that's going to take probably quite a few. I mean, we're still working on that. We're still refining it. One of the things we found we had to change was which coffee we were drinking, because we were bringing in a coffee that had mold in it and it was getting into our system. So we had to go to a mold-free coffee. So that's kind of a long-term process. Don't feel like you have to do it all at once. But what are some of the symptoms that people would experience if they started to get a buildup of toxins in their system? Like, what can that cause, and why should we be worried about that on a health side?
So it depends on what toxin you're talking about, and that's what makes it so tricky. But if you look at a lot of the pathologies and diseases that we're studying, we're starting to see a huge environmental toxin association. So you're starting to see things like even ALS. Research has just come out that there's an environmental toxin component to ALS, cancers, Parkinson's, autoimmune conditions. So of course, that's the extreme of it, right? That's if something, can be left for a long time. That's the extreme of what can happen. Just kind of first steps. Some of these guys are, they're massive hormone disruptors. So something I commonly see people all the time is, my hormones are really out of balance, and they just want to do a hormone test. And I'm like, okay, well, we have to figure out why your hormones are out of balance. Do you have these plastics in your system that act like estrogen? So your body thinks it's estrogen, so your hormones get real out of balance. So hormonal imbalance, weight gain, and inability to lose weight. I know you touched on this as a personal piece, but this is huge, especially in my women. They're like, I could eat nothing. I could eat, anything, and it just doesn't matter. I cannot lose weight. And it's that, your body's harbored so many toxins in there that if it lets go of that fat cell, it has to deal with that toxin, and it can't. So inability to lose weight, really hard time losing weight, gaining weight, all of that is a big piece. Brain fog, skin issues, depression, anxiety, even gut symptoms. I mean, a lot of these toxins are linked to leaky gut. So unfortunately, there's not like one smoking gun of, you have this symptom, it's toxin overload. It's more of that, okay, things don't feel right, but my blood looks normal. That's kind of, okay, we need to explore this possible toxin outlet.
So isn't it our body's job to detox though? Like that's what our body's made to do, is to detox all these things and actually to handle this. What's going on that our bodies can't detox and these things are building up in our system?
That is something I get all the time. I actually have a troll on the internet that loves to come at me with this. And it's true, right? So look at how our bodies have evolved. Our liver is a detoxing organ. That thing works so well, but our bodies were never designed to handle this high of a toxin load. And so you go back 150 years ago, and if you got exposed to heavy metals or something just naturally in the environment, your body could detox it because you weren't getting hundreds of toxins every single day. But what happens is your liver has a capacity. It can only handle so much at a time. And so if you get into this place where you are putting in tons of toxins every day, your liver gets backlogged. And so that's where you get this toxin accumulation. Your body goes, okay, liver, you can't handle this right now. I'm going to store you. We'll come back to you, these toxins. That's where that accumulation happens. And once that starts, you just keep accumulating, and your liver could never keep up at that rate. So that's where coming in and doing a big detox to pull them out of your system is really helpful. And then from there, you can add in daily detoxings. How do I add things into my daily routine to never accumulate toxins again? But you do have to get that, if you're at 100% capacity, you got to bring that way down to get it where your liver can actually handle that toxic load.
Yeah, there's just too much going on. There's only so much our body can process at any one point. And so it starts storing it. And at least for me, where do we start storing it? It's often in the fat, isn't it?
Yep. It's an easy storage place, right? It's a plump cell, and the body's like, cool. It's a protected little area that the toxin's not going to harm us. And so the body's like, cool, I'm just going to put you there. And it's a great, survival mechanism, because your body doesn't want that floating around, but it backfires on us. Then we end up with, massive toxin accumulation in fat cells. And you're like, gosh, I can't lose this weight, which is, so many people, what's going on.
Which is a wonderful aspect of our bodies. Our bodies have been, fearfully and wonderfully made. And we can be, this is the first time understanding all of this is the first time that I've been thankful for the extra weight, that I'm like, oh, I can't lose this weight. I'm so frustrated. And it's the first time I've been really thankful for it, because I'm like, if it hadn't been there, it would have, all of these toxins would have been going into my organs. They would have been circulating through my whole system. They would have been, going to the babies that I was pregnant with or nursing. And now my body's essentially sequestered them and like jailed them in these fat cells. And I'm like, okay, thank you for these fat cells. I am so thankful for them. Let's help my body get these things out. So if we have this kind of accumulation, we've got this toxin buildup, and our bodies are at a point where they just can't handle it naturally. And so it's, it's really starting to pack on. What is it that we would do to support our bodies? How do we detox? How do we get these things out of our system if they've been built up?
So it's a two-part approach, right? So the biggest thing is people always are like, okay, I have toxins, I want to pull them out. But what we have to remember is what the toll of that is. So before you ever detox, you have to backpedal a little bit, and you have to make sure your body is supported. And that's making sure liver, gallbladder, kidneys, all of your detox organs are primed, supported, and ready to go, that the body has what it needs. So when you start to pull these toxins, your body's like, cool, got it. It's out. So you prep first, and that step, if you miss it, that's where people feel terrible, right? They just start pulling toxins, and that's that, oh my gosh, I felt horrible when I did a detox. That's missing that step. Then we go into binding. And so you use different binding agents depending on what you're pulling. So mold is going to be a little different than a heavy metal, is going to be a little bit different than an environmental toxin. So that's where the testing is really crucial, because it allows you to go, okay, I have a mold, so I need to work on a binder for that. And I have some heavy metals, so I need to work on that. So you use these different binders. There's a whole scale of binders that people can use. So a binder is basically an agent that acts kind of like hands, right? It goes, grabs a toxin and gets it out of your system. And so there's binders like bentonite clay, activated charcoal. Those are more so kind of, I say, old school binders. They just grab. They don't know what they're grabbing. They just grab. They're very gentle, but they grab. Then you've got some of the, more advanced technology, the ones that I really love, they're carbon based. And so these guys can go in and out of cells and they only grab what they're supposed to grab. And so you can get in, that's how you can be very, very specific and bind only mold or heavy metals or whatever you're trying to bind. But it goes and it's basically just then a slow process of getting them out. These things you don't want your body dumping them. You want a gradual detox so that you can feel well and it's not too taxing on your system. And you basically just will pull and detox. And then once you get them out, then it's just a matter of rebuilding what they've destroyed. So was there hormone disruption? Do I need to balance that? Did they take a toll on my gut? Do I need to balance that? Whatever the toll was of these toxins, you just go in and rebalance. And then you're in a really good place. That's, then you can just be in maintenance mode.
Yeah, I really like that. And I really like your approach. And I've appreciated it as a patient, as somebody who's actually walking through that, of like this slow process of detox. Because I know I said to you when we started looking at my lab results, and I'm like, okay, detox, I can't get sick for 3 months, because that's immediately what comes to mind. I've watched my mom go through some pretty crazy detoxes that she's always doing something fun, and interesting health-wise. And she's put herself through some very interesting things. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like I cannot, my lifestyle cannot handle, just as a mom, being sick or having brain fog or just feeling miserable for months on end. And your response to me was something like, don't worry, I work for a lot of entrepreneurs and they would fire me if I gave them brain fog and they couldn't think. And so I love that, because that's been my experience. I've had minor bits of discomfort, but nothing that has been to the level that I feel like I can't think. I can't, be more than a few feet away from a toilet, like nothing like that. It's maybe been a little bit more like my stomach is doing interesting things today. It's a little uncomfortable, but I think that's so important, because a lot of times we get stressed out about learning that we have a high level of toxins and we're like, let's just get it done. And your approach to supporting the body, supporting the liver first so it can help aid, but then having those binders that can actually help like escort things out of your system instead of just getting them recirculating again, because that's the last thing we want to do, is make ourselves like re-sick over the toxins that our body has already tried to like sweep under the rug and like, deal with a little bit. So that's, I think that's been a really important approach. Are there other basic things that you recommend people do while they're detoxing just to help support their system?
I always say it's like having tools on our tool belt, right? We have kind of our core is going to be what we eat, what we put into our body, and no more toxins. So figuring out if you had a source of something, we got to figure out where that is and stop it. And then our supplements, that's the core. We have to do that. How, we have all these other tools that we can use, and we want to use them cleverly, not to overdo it where we're like dumping, but we can use things to speed it up. So there's like infrared saunas done moderately can be very helpful. I don't really like people doing them like 5 to 7 days a week, 60 minutes a day, because you get into that toxic dump. But saunas can be very helpful. Coffee enemas are one of my absolute favorites. And I know certain people like they're, hard no, but they can be very helpful in lowering the toxic load on the liver and allowing you to really move toxins faster without seeing a big, flare up of symptoms. They can really be great for inflammation as well. Then you've got like dry brushing, red light. And then of course, just, things like exercise and everyone has a little bit of a different, tolerance to that, but just stretching and walking. But we have so many different tools and they're not necessary. You don't have to do all of them. Some people do better with some than others. And it's just, that's the area we have to play around and go, okay, what's going to be the best for you, where you feel great, you're still getting good results, and we're detoxing at a decent rate.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really helpful. So when you're wondering if you have this toxin load, you're walking around, maybe somebody's listening to this and they're like, "Ooh, that might sound like some of the things I've been dealing with. I wonder if this is me." Do you have to go get a blood test done? Is that the kind of lab work that is usually done for toxin loads? Or is it a hair test? I know I heard about those for a lot of years. What kind of testing would you usually get done to find out?
We're using urine testing. So we're seeing what is in your system. And basically, we're looking for tiny amounts of it in urine. It's a very, very small sample shipped to you. So no blood, no finger pricks, no hair has to be cut out. It's about the most painless sample you could do, and a very easy test. And you get the results 2.5 weeks. It's easy.
Oh, that's nice. When I got my box, I thought I had like gotten a present in the mail. It was all like, it was like, how if you get an Apple, like a new iPhone or something like that, it's all packaged in this way that's like, oh, I just got this gift. My urine sample test came in this box that was like so beautiful. It was really nice. It really made me laugh, actually. I was like, well, if they wanted to soften the blow of having to do a lab test, they did a really good job on doing it. Okay, so let's say somebody thinks that they have toxins and maybe they get a test done. Is there a basic protocol that anybody could do at home to eliminate possible toxins, or do you really need to get like a customized detox program?
I would say it depends, right? If you're someone that's dealing with one minor toxin, that's pretty easy on your system. It's not anything crazy. That's something that you could, add in some, liver support, some, glutathione, some B vitamins, and a little binder and probably be okay. But the tricky part is these toxins are very hard on the system. And so a lot of people will, when they try to do it on their own, will dive in, with this like harder, faster, stronger approach. And they think if I should take one, I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to be done in, half the time. And so I end up with a lot of people that come to see me and I have to kind of undo what they've done because they've tried to detox. And so I always recommend, following someone's protocol. It doesn't necessarily have to be you work with someone one-on-one, but follow a protocol to a T, and don't think that if they tell you to take 1, taking 2 is better. I promise you it's not. There's a rhyme or reason for the dosage, but follow a protocol because every supplement that's in there is in there for a reason. And so you want to make sure that you're not missing a crucial piece of a protocol that then throws your liver for a loop and all of a sudden your liver enzymes are crazy high, or something goes by the wayside, because then you have to kind of stop, backpedal, and fix what's been done and then go forward. So I don't really recommend detoxing on your own at all. Follow someone, work with someone. Just make sure that you have someone that can help make sure your protocol is balanced and that you're not going to cause more harm than good.
Yeah, that's really important. That's a good thought, because I've definitely seen people who have tried to detox on their own and they end up really sick. And if you start stirring up these toxins again, I mean, you're successfully detoxing, right? Like you're getting it out and moving in your system. But if you start stirring them up in your body, you can make yourself sick, and you can make yourself sicker than you started with and create a lot of health problems for yourself. So you do want to be careful. If you do it by yourself, be very gentle with your system. And I think, that liver support, all of the support systems that Dr. Tori's talking about, and making sure you have some sort of a binder to help remove it out of your body and escort it right on out through your regular elimination systems is just super important. But go slow. And if you can, work with somebody who can actually walk you through the process, because it can get a little scary in the middle, especially if you've maybe overdone it a little bit. You can be like, oh my gosh, I think I'm making myself sicker. And so you do want somebody who can kind of hold your hand. I didn't ask you this beforehand, Dr. Tori, but do you have current openings? Like, are you still taking new patients right now? I know you're super busy and you are a very desired practitioner right now, but do you have openings for people?
I do. Yep.
Okay.
And I also have kind of where we can give you kind of a DIY protocol as well, where for cases that aren't super complex, I can give you a little package protocol to follow that if you don't want to work with me directly.
Oh, perfect. So we're going to give you guys all of Dr. Tori's contact information and a link to sign up with her if you want to do this kind of testing, or if you want to find out more. So we'll give you that link in the show notes. But let's see, how can people find you outside of that link? I see you're on Facebook and Instagram. Is that right? How would they find you there?
Yeah, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, I'm just Dr. Tori Thompson. Pretty easy to follow.
Perfect.
Yeah, send me a message. I love hearing from you guys.
And if you guys decide to work with Dr. Tori, I really do recommend doing as much testing as you can. I know we found things in all different parts of our tests that we wouldn't have even thought to do, because we were just like, well, if we're going to do it, let's just do the whole thing. And we did the total toxin bundle. And we found stuff that we would have never found that we're really thankful of. So, doing this kind of work, doing this kind of lab, I mean, your own story, you said you spent $100,000 before you started finding answers. So the lab work is not cheap, but I just keep thinking, oh my goodness, the things that I found, nobody can say for sure, but I was probably headed towards cancer within a couple of years would be my guess at the levels of things that I found. And I'll tell you what, lab work and a little detox supplements, they're a whole lot cheaper and a whole lot better on a lifestyle than going through cancer. So I'm so thankful that we decided to do that and to go ahead and make that decision. So I really encourage you guys, take a serious look at that. We're living in a really toxic world right now. Try to reduce your toxins. We're going to be talking more about that in an upcoming interview here with the Truly Free CEO. And we're going to be talking about reducing toxin loads. But take this seriously, because I think it's really affecting all of us. And Dr. Tori, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate that you took the time to talk with us and to explain some of these things, because I think they're pretty foremost on a lot of people's minds.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I love talking toxins. So anytime we get to do this, it's a good day in my book.
Okay, great. Well, we may try and have you on again, because I know a lot of people are really interested in this. So thank you very much. And you guys, thanks for hanging out with us. And we will see you next week. Talk to you later. Goodbye.